Good morning. What a wonderful morning to talk about books. It's been a while. I have a few months of reading to sum up and to wrap up with you guys. I wrote this is beginning in April, I think. It's not that many considering how many months have passed. Let's begin. Tempest of Tea. Uh, it's There are quite a few books you can consider for like probably a little bit of autumn or summer rain vibe. So Tempest of the Tea is a story about vampires and illegal bloodhounds under the tea shop. It's a heist, and I believe I would probably have read it more with more interest if it wasn't a heist. It was a very quick read. I think it only took me a day or two, but I don't have I don't have a lot more to say about this book. Um, if you're looking something about vampire, the map is pretty accurate. I think when you read the story and gothic vibes, as you can tell, then I believe you should pick up this book. Now, two other books is called Down Among the Sticks and Beneath Sugar Skies is the continuation of a story, novellas for wayward children. It's about children who discover doors to other worlds and might lose them or interact with them. Down Among the Sticks was about children who discovered the door into this world filled with monsters. It's a beach side filled with monsters, so almost like a Frankenstein type of professor. There are vampires, and two sisters get into this world, and we sort of choose alternative paths. Beneath the Sugar Skies, I can't quite remember very well about this actually, but I know it was much closer to the first book. It was sort of following the same characters and mentioning the same doors. Next book, Tender Beast by Lizelle Sambury, and I really like her books. I just follow all the books along. Tender Beast was not my favorite among her books, but Tender Beast is very suitable for summer, rain, and autumn because it is also sort of a thrillery horror story. It's about a murder that happened and sort of an investigation about murder and other more supernatural vibes unravel. It's a very messed up family. There's quite a few messed up families in Lizelle stories, so it's a messed up family. Lies We Sing to the Sea. I picked up this book hoping to some sort of sea story for summer. It was a retelling of Greek mythology. However, people recommend to go into this as a new story because it has very little roots to the original. It is about a girl sacrificed for the glory or wealth of kingdom and drowned into the sea. However, one of them returns because she's not died, she's been transformed by the sea, or I don't know, claimed by Poseidon. In either way, I was really going for this like a revenge story. Two of the books that I want to talk about them together is first of all is Emily Weil's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was very well received book. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and it has so many readers. And I tried to annotate it. I kind of stopped a little bit, but I was really into it to the point where I'm gonna get the second book and follow through. Because lots of the times I thought it was a romantic story because that was trends in the fantasy world sometimes. But actually, there's very little romance happening, and it's really just this explorer and her journal, and she's actually quite jaded and sarcastic in a sense. Like she has that sort of darker characteristics to her, or more critical, I guess. And it is about fairy magic. It's mostly what you go into this is quite slow, and you mostly go to this for the vibes. I love to describe this book, by the way, as a cottage core deconstructed because it will tell you exactly the symbols of cottage core, like a little cottage in a snowy mountain. It will tell you that it's so cold and you have to like break through the snow to get sweaty, and the smell inside the cottage is smells of animals. But basically, it will tell you the negatives on top of that description, and it's quite nice because it's also realistic. The sister novel would be Half a Soul. I believe this was a debut novel for the author called Olivia Atwater. She has quite a few readers as well. It is still fairy magic, and it is still following sort of maybe a similar vibe. It's a trilogy. It does it is possible to read it as a standalone. It follows a girl whose soul was, as for offending a fairy prince or lord, was snatched in half and taken away. So the scissors is actually big symbolic in the story, but basically, uh, Dora that we follow has only half soul. It was a pick for the month for me, but I wasn't necessarily as impressed. So if you're looking in between these two books, sort of, if you're looking to go in a similar genre, I would go with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies because it definitely left a little bit bigger mark for me. But if you're looking something quick and just like pick up for travel, you can definitely pick up Half a Soul as well. Was Atlanta. I was in my Greek retelling era. I listened to Atlanta as an audiobook, as some of my books that I read were. It is a very great retelling of Atlanta, who was left by her family in the woods and picked up by Artemis, I believe, to grow with her nymphs and sort of become a hunter. And so Atlanta joins Argonauts. She joins the ship, and we follow that sort of mythology thread. It was great, engaging character, a very beautiful language. But I usually go to these stories for the language and the sort of way it was described and built. Um, so it definitely didn't disappoint me. It was an amazing read. I'm probably gonna read more of the author's other books. And then next after that, I picked up Medea. I was looking to pick up a different Medea because apparently there's two of them. But I thought it was still great retelling. The one I picked up, the language was also beautiful and the retelling was great. And the story intertwined with this Atlanta that I read before because obviously we follow some of the myths overcross. And you just feel like you constantly live in this world of heroes. So it was great in that sense. And then I looked up the rating of the other book on Goodreads and I realized it's lower, even though it has very positive comments. I decided that I might not read another Medea because I just can't go through the same myth right now again. Maybe sometime in the future. But in between Atlantis and Medea's character, I would probably like Atlanta better. She's more like lovable. Medea is quite angry and her life has just been miserable. Now, another thing that, and I have to say, reading these books, I thought Jason, who is the leader of Argonauts, and we both crossed paths with him, is absolutely terrible character. None of the books save him, sadly. Right, let's move on. Moth Keeper. Moth Keeper I picked up in France when we were traveling, and we still have a Shakespeare and Co. stamp. And it is a story about a person who's guarding this light and moths with it. It's very cutely drawn, and all these characters are very magical. Even though the story is very slow and light, and it's really just the atmosphere and drawings, and I think just soaking the beauty in you. And I put it on my recommendation, probably the only one who went onto the recommendation list for the month of June. It is an author who wrote Tea Dragon Society, so like if you love the vibes, you probably love this one as well. Now, One Year at Ellesmere by Faye Faring Hicks. I know Faye Faring Hicks from some other works like Pumpkinheads and Nameless City. And I just follow her as an author. I follow her art in general. Now, this is much more close to reality story. It's about a kid of a less privileged coming to this privileged school and just basically a year at Ellesmere, a year at this academy. Um, it was very lovely that the privileged girl was very nice and their friendship. And I think if you're going for these sort of friendship vibes, definitely pick it up. I'll go into the more boring book that I'm still reading right now. So it's on my audiobook. It's called This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, I believe. Because I'm off work right now, I feel like I can actually listen to people dealing with patients and people at work. And that's why I waited for this month specifically to be able to listen to it, though lots of people asked me to read it before. It's a sarcastic way looking back into a medical profession, how it is really to the ground, how there are mistakes and how there are connections with patients, but it is looked at very sort of funny tone. Now, because my partner bought Astro Boy, we're still following medical professionals. Because my partner bought Astro Boy, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna read it. I've never actually watched the animation or knew much about it. As is the volume one manga, but what I'm saying, Osamu Tezuka is basically also in medical school. Then he started sort of writing this, and there is little intros of author explaining little things, why the certain pathways took place, why characters have like four fingers, things like that, really. And I really enjoy this old manga. I really enjoy similar type of time mangas really written. So like 50-ish, I think 50s, 60s we're looking at. Um, because there are some other authors I know from that time, and like it's just something about that black and white simplified um art. Something is really touching about it. In any way, Astro Boy, if you haven't heard about it, is about the story of almost like a Pinocchio worth story about the mechanic doll built after loss of a son, and then basically being sold off because of the grief and not being able to cope with its not growing. So Astro Boy is this mechanical doll, like a robot. So we live in a world of robots and sci-fi, really moving anything. Is Kaya? Again, it's a graphic novel because I just saw this picture and it felt very empowering character, and that's why I really picked it up. Now, this world is very, very different. It is already in some sort of planet where like lizardy people live, and we have this half robot android girl. So like it felt absolutely different, not what necessarily I was going for. We were, as far as I remember, we were investigating an incident in this, but it was more the action type of story. We're getting there. um there is only a few more left, so give me a second. Since we're going with the comic books, let's just go through the comic books. I read a New Girl. The only reason I knew about this comic because once again I follow Cassandra Callan, which is the author of it, because she does funny comics strips like around her life, a life called Cassandra Comics, and yeah, it's absolute joy. Now, New Girl is a graphic novel. I have no idea when did she manages to do both funny comics and entire comic novel. But yay, authors, yay, illustrators, right? You can tell I really love following illustrators. It is part of me, really. Now, New Girl is really new release. Once I heard about it, I literally saw it on almost the same day in the shop, and I just grabbed it. It follows a girl who transfers. I would say that she transfers somewhat to Quebec, if I got it correctly. but she's from Romania. And now I wonder, because Offer has the ability to follow her own life through the comic lens. I wonder if this is based on her life, because she picked Romania. She didn't lean in any stereotypes on any people she had in this comic, which was so beautiful, to be honest. And I found that she is a Romanian. She moved into Canada with her family, I believe, and she finished a University of Montreal. So talking about like not understanding the languages is one of the main plot stories in here. So some of the comics have this squiggly bubbles that don't say anything. That's how character perceives people talking in different foreign language or accent. And it was really easy to understand her. It was kind of wholesome, really. I don't know. It was really touching. The only thing that I have to say, a lot of times, I really don't like when the stories are about periods. And this is my own fault, because it's even said about in the back that she has to manage her periods. Sorry. But it was actually, I was able to look past it, and it still felt very wholesome. So I probably would have picked it up anyway. Character is really likable. She does, other friendships as well. Again, friendships in schools, I'm a kid. I like my friendships in schools. And the next graphic novel, which again I picked up after seeing it in France, but actually bought it separately because it's really big and floppy. Now, then I saw it, I was like, look at these colors, yellows, reds, greens, they're all so wonderfully different. Now, it's called How to Survive in the North. It follows an expedition sort of people, and actually I think it might be historical, because actually there is a writing about in 1900s there was expedition, whatnot. I think it could be some sort of relevance to it. However, it was very depressing. I thought it will be glimmer of hope in this cold, and I'm probably more of a fantasy writer. I live in my fantasy world. So like I wanted some glimmer of hope in this cold mountain, in this cold area, but actually it was all depressing about how, people drink themselves to boredom, and how people just die, and there's nothing around you and just cold and whatnot, and I wouldn't read it again. The Fellowship of Puzzle Makers. I listen. This is by Samuel Burr. I listen to podcast of failing writers. Do listen to it. And even the person, Samuel himself, is so wholesome. And how he told about this book coming along, how he saw the club of crosswords, and he just kept that idea throughout writing this book. And this is amazing, because I don't feel like necessarily a lot of drama happening. I think it was very wholesome and cozy, and I think that was the goal of writing, and just feeling the vibes and just enjoying your puzzles, really. And I think it definitely managed to do what it set off for. Okay, so the main story is about this child raised by this club, basically, and like he's sort of looking for connections and also trying to solve. There's sort of like a left puzzle after death or whatnot, and obviously trying to solve that. Um, Now the puzzles. Oh my god! Let me just show you some of them. Entire book and almost entire chapter has like little crosswords and literally crosswords. And names. Sorry, if there's any names of the chapters. You also can like literally can fill it as a crossword, and there's different ones. However, and the slidey sort of wordings, like there's so many different puzzles, and I'm such a puzzle fan. However, I felt that it was sadly distracting for me. I really loved it. I thought it was a bit too much, and it kind of got me into solving them rather than actually getting into like it was like primary content at some time. And another thing what I want to say is some of them are super complicated. Like I know it's meant for people of different levels, and that's the difficulty, because then I write my puzzles, I'm almost writing a middle grade level. So it was a bit complicated for me, and some of them had multiple layers. How I want to say example was a crossword, very crosswords, right? The scramble. um, was not only crossing the words to find some sort of answer, but also the words were on the like opposite alphabet. So my brain can't do it both of the things in my mind, really. And I think each word was not exact word given, but also like a description of it. So like that's like three layers for a single puzzle. But you can tell if I can talk a lot about a book, means I really enjoyed it. And I think it's just very cozy read. There's one more book on my audiobooks, and it's definitely worth a mention. It's one of the highly acclaimed. They have won Women's Prize, and it is very unique, and you wouldn't find anything like that. By Susanna Clark, and it is called Piranesi. I finally read Piranesi. I lots of times I thought it is gonna be mythological story based on the cover and the name, and I thought like, oh, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not in the mood for that. But actually, it is not. It is not as thick as her Mr. Norrell book, so it is definitely possible to read quite quickly. Now we follow the character trapped in the house that basically he calls it the house and he calls it the world, but it's actually a labyrinth, and it has sculptures, and it sort of goes into that Greek sort of vibe where it is sculptures and like minotaur sculptures, and the only other person in it he calls the other, and basically that's all he knows of his life. This is a labyrinth, and all that labyrinth provides him with, that's all he knows of his life. So we get it as a mystery that sort of decodes itself as you go through the book, and it's very quick read, so I won't tell anything else. Finally, I managed to finish entire book wrap up. It was so many of them because I kept delaying it. Um, and there is like always very different picks, and like there are some very wholesome and soft, nice books, and there are some darker ones. So I think you really can go into this book wrap up and pick up titles that would suit you. Do let me know which ones you picked up. See you next time. Bye bye.